The mining station prospector's dream hung in the void like a metal spider, its 8 extraction arms reaching toward the asteroid field that had made the crew rich beyond their wildest dreams. Captain Sarah Chen watched the latest haul being processed through the reinforced windows of the command center. Rare metals, exotic crystals, and elements that didn't even have names yet, all flowing into the station's storage bays. Another successful run, her first officer, Marcus Webb, said as he reviewed the daily reports. At this rate, we'll have enough to retire the entire crew within 2 years. Sarah nodded, but something nagged at her. 3 months of perfect mining operations in a region that every other expedition had marked as hazardous, a void. The previous survey teams had reported equipment failures, strange energy readings, and crews that simply vanished without explanation. Yet here they were, pulling treasure from rocks that should have been impossible to mine. The answer came at 0347 hours. Ship time. Alarms screamed throughout the station as massive shapes emerged from behind the largest asteroids. Ships, if they could be called that. They looked more like living creatures, sleek, predatory forms with surfaces that seemed to shift and ripple like skin. No right angles, no obvious weapons ports, just organic curves that spoke of something that had evolved to hunt in the darkness between stars. "Contact!" Sensor Officer Liu called out. "Multiple bogies, unknown configuration. Count is... Jesus, Captain, I'm reading at least 50 vessels." Sarah's blood turned cold. 50 ships could reduce their mining station to scrap in minutes. "Hail them. Standard first contact protocols." No response to any frequency, Captain. The alien ships moved with a grace that made Sarah's skin crawl. They didn't fly so much as swim through space, their forms undulating as if they were moving through water instead of vacuum. As they drew closer, details became visible that made the situation even worse. These weren't ships. They were creatures. Living beings the size of frigates, with bioluminescent patterns running along their flanks like neural pathways. What she had taken for engine ports were actually massive maws filled with crystalline teeth. The sensors were eyes, dozens of them, arranged in clusters along their elongated heads. "Captain," Marcus whispered, "are those things alive?" Before Sarah could answer, the creatures suddenly stopped their advance. They hung motionless in space, and Sarah realized they were studying the station just as intently as the station was studying them. The largest of the creatures, easily the size of a battlecruiser, slowly rotated to face the command center directly. Its multiple eyes focused on the windows where Sarah stood. Then it spoke, not through radio, not through any technological means they could detect, but directly into their minds. "Small builders, you harvest from our feeding grounds." The psychic voice was cold, alien, and carried undertones of barely restrained violence. Sarah felt her knees buckle, but forced herself to remain standing. First contact with a hostile alien species. Every captain's nightmare. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Prospector's Dream. We didn't know this area was claimed. We're willing to negotiate." A sound like laughter echoed through their minds, but there was no humor in it. Negotiate. As if prey negotiates with predator. "We are the Kithara. We have hunted these spaces for 1,000 cycles. Your kind is new, small, fragile. Why should we not simply feed?" Sarah's mind raced. The Federation had protocols for first contact, but nothing in the manuals covered psychic space whales with an appetite for humans. She had to buy time, had to find some way to establish communication that didn't end with everyone dying. "Because we're not just prey," she said, projecting the thought as clearly as she could. "We're builders, explorers, creators. Surely the Kithara value more than simple destruction?" The large creature's eyes seemed to bore into her soul. "Show us, small builder. Show us why you deserve to exist in our domain." What followed was the strangest negotiation in human history. The Kithara, it turned out, were ancient beyond human comprehension. They had been traveling the galaxy since before humans had discovered fire, hunting lesser species, and consuming the energy-rich minerals that accumulated in asteroid fields. They were apex predators in every sense, individually powerful enough to destroy most ships, collectively organized enough to dominate entire star systems. But they were also intelligent, curious, and surprisingly honorable by their own alien standards. When Sarah offered to show them human technology and culture in exchange for safe passage, the largest Kithara, who identified itself as Void Singer, agreed to observe. The next several days were a delicate dance of cultural exchange. Sarah had her crew demonstrate human mining techniques, showing how they could extract materials without destroying the asteroids themselves. The Kithara were impressed despite themselves. Their own feeding habits left asteroid fields barren, while human methods left the basic structures intact. "Your people are efficient," Void Singer admitted during one of their mental conversations. "Wasteful in some ways, but efficient in others. You take what you need and leave the rest." Sarah seized on this opening. "That's how we've survived. We adapt, we learn. We find ways to work with our environment instead of just consuming it." But it was Marcus who provided the moment that changed everything. During a routine maintenance check on the mining equipment, one of the Kithara scouts, a smaller creature about the size of a fighter craft, became entangled in the station's sensor array. The young Kithara's struggles only made the situation worse, and its distress calls brought several larger creatures rushing to help. Without hesitation, Marcus suited up and went outside to help free the trapped alien. It was an incredibly dangerous move. One wrong mental command from any of the Kithara could have killed him instantly. But Marcus worked methodically, using cutting tools to carefully slice through the sensor cables while broadcasting calming thoughts toward the panicking scout. The rescue took over an hour. When the young Kithara was finally free, it circled Marcus several times before gently touching his helmet with one of its sensory tendrils. The contact sent a burst of gratitude and amazement through the mental link. "Why?" Void Singer asked that night. "Why risk your life for one of our young? We are not allies. We are barely even speaking terms." Marcus, exhausted but still running on adrenaline, looked up at the stars where the Kithara fleet waited. Because it was the right thing to do. Because anyone in trouble deserves help, no matter what they look like or where they come from. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah held her breath, wondering if Marcus's idealism had just doomed them all. But when Void Singer's mental voice returned, there was something different in it. Something that might have been respect. "Your kind is strange, small builders. In 1,000 cycles of hunting, we have never encountered prey that would risk itself for predators." "We're not prey," Sarah said quietly, "and you're not just predators. We're all just trying to survive out here." The next morning brought an unexpected sight. The Kithara fleet had reorganized itself, and several of the creatures had moved closer to the station. But instead of threatening positions, they seemed to be forming a protective perimeter around Prospector's dream. "Captain," Liu reported, her voice filled with bewilderment, "I'm detecting multiple incoming ships. Configuration matches known pirate vessels. 43 ships total, heading directly for our position." Sarah's heart sank. Pirates were bad enough when you had naval support. Alone in an uncharted asteroid field, with millions of credits worth of cargo, they were sitting ducks. But Void Singer's mental voice carried a tone she had never heard before, something that might have been amusement. "It seems your small builders have attracted other predators. How interesting." The pirate fleet emerged from hyperspace with all the subtlety of a meteor strike. 43 ships of various configurations, all bristling with weapons and painted in the gaudy colors that marked them as members of the Red Comet Syndicate. Sarah recognized the lead ship, the Crimson Reaper, flagship of Captain Bloody Morrison, one of the most wanted criminals in the sector. Morrison's voice crackled over the comm system, full of predatory satisfaction. "Well, well, well, look what we found hiding out here. A fat mining station all alone in the dark. This is your lucky day, folks. Surrender your cargo and maybe we'll let some of you live." Sarah was about to respond when Void Singer's massive form suddenly moved between the station and the pirate fleet. The other Kithara followed suit, forming a living wall of alien muscle and natural weaponry. Morrison's confident tone faltered. "What the hell are those things?" "They are thieves," Void Singer observed to Sarah. "Parasites who take what others have built. We know their kind well." The mental conversation that followed happened too quickly for human minds to fully process. Sarah caught fragments, discussions of honor, territory, the difference between hunting and stealing. When it was over, Void Singer's decision was crystal clear. Small builders. The ancient predator said, "Perhaps it is time you learned what it means to have the Kithara as allies." What happened next would become legend in the mining colonies. The Kithara didn't simply attack the pirates, they hunted them. The space whales moved through the pirate formation like apex predators through a school of fish, their crystalline teeth tearing through hull plating as if it were paper. Ships that tried to flee found themselves herded back into the killing ground by smaller Kithara scouts. But it wasn't mindless slaughter. The Kithara were precise, calculated. They targeted weapon systems and engines, leaving life support intact. Pirates who surrendered immediately were allowed to limp away in escape pods. Those who fought to the bitter end found their ships turned into cosmic debris. The Crimson Reaper lasted longest, Morrison's desperation driving him to increasingly reckless attacks. But when Void Singer finally closed with the pirate flagship, the outcome was never in doubt. The massive Kithara wrapped itself around the ship like a living net, applying just enough pressure to crack the hull without breaching life support. Morrison's final transmission was barely coherent. "What are you things? What do you want?" Void Singer's response echoed through every ship in the system. "We want nothing from you, parasite. But these small builders have shown us something we had forgotten. They have shown us honor." When the battle was over, the surviving pirates fled the system in whatever ships could still fly. The Kithara returned to their positions around the mining station, seemingly no worse for wear, despite having just dismantled an entire pirate fleet. Sarah found herself standing at the observation deck again, watching the alien creatures move through space with their impossible grace. Everything had changed in the span of a few days. Humanity had made contact with an ancient predator species, earned their respect, and somehow convinced them to act as protectors. "You surprise us, small builders," Void Singer said, its mental voice carrying what might have been approval. "Your Marcus showed courage for one of our young. You showed wisdom in your words. Your people showed honor in your actions. These are traits we value." "What happens now?" Sarah asked. "Now we learn from each other. Your people have much to teach about building and creating. Perhaps we have things to teach about survival and strength. The galaxy is large enough for both predators and builders to thrive." As Sarah watched, several of the smaller Kithara began to move among the asteroids, their movements different now. Instead of the aggressive hunting patterns they had displayed before, they seemed to be studying the mining operations with genuine curiosity. Marcus joined her at the observation window, his arm still in a sling from the rescue operation. "Think they'll really stick around?" Sarah smiled, feeling a strange sense of optimism despite the alien nature of their new allies. "I think we just made some very powerful friends. The question is, What are we going to do with that friendship? The answer would come sooner than she expected. Deep space sensors had detected the approach of something much larger than a pirate fleet, something that would test the newfound alliance between humans and Cathara in ways none of them could imagine. The contact came 3 weeks after the pirate attack, just as the crew of Prospector's Dream had begun to settle into their strange new routine. Working alongside creatures that could tear their station apart with a thought had taken some adjustment, but the benefits were undeniable. The Cathara's presence had turned the asteroid field into the safest mining operation in known space. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the station's xenobiologist, had made remarkable progress in her studies. The Cathara had allowed her to take biosamples and energy readings, providing insights into a form of life that human science had never imagined possible. They were living fusion reactors, she discovered, able to process raw stellar material and convert it into pure energy. Their crystalline teeth weren't just for show, they were actually sophisticated matter converters that could break down almost any substance at the molecular level. "It's incredible," Elena explained to Captain Chen during their weekly briefing. "They don't just eat matter, they reorganize it. Those asteroids they've been feeding on for centuries. They weren't destroying them, they were actually improving them, making them more stable, more rich in useful materials. Which explains why this field has such unusual concentrations of rare elements," Marcus added. "The Cathara have been cultivating it like a garden." Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on the long-range sensors. For the past 12 hours, they had been picking up intermittent signals from the edge of the system. Nothing clear enough to identify, but definitely artificial. Something big was coming their way. Her concerns were validated when Void Singer's mental voice suddenly filled the command center with urgent intensity. "Small builders, we must speak immediately. Your detecting devices. They have found the others approaching." "Others?" Sarah asked aloud, causing her bridge crew to look up from their stations. "What others?" The answer came not in words, but in images projected directly into their minds. Sarah gasped as she saw flashes of massive ships, sleek and organic like the Cathara, but wrong somehow. Darker, more aggressive, with modifications that spoke of violence and conquest. "The Devourers come," Void Singer explained. "Our brothers, but not our brothers. They have chosen a different path." Over the next hour, the full story emerged through the strange mental link the Cathara shared with humans. The species had once been united, traveling the galaxy as nomadic hunters and gardeners. But several thousand years ago, a faction had broken away. These rebels, calling themselves the Devourers, had decided that the old ways were too slow, too wasteful. Why cultivate asteroids over centuries when you could simply consume entire planets in decades? The philosophical split had become a physical one. The Devourers had modified themselves, replacing their natural matter conversion systems with crude but powerful absorption devices. They had become living weapons, capable of stripping whole worlds of life to fuel their endless hunger. "They're coming here," Sarah realized. "They know about the asteroid field." "Yes, but more than that, they know about you." Word has spread through the hunting grounds of the small builders who earned the respect of the true Cathara. The Devourers see this as weakness. They come to prove their strength by destroying what we have chosen to protect. The situation became clear over the next few days as long-range scans revealed the approaching fleet. 12 massive Devourers, each one larger and more heavily armed than Void Singer's people. Behind them came a host of smaller creatures, corrupted Cathara that had been twisted into living weapons, their natural grace replaced by mechanical augmentations designed for pure destruction. Void Singer called for a gathering of the true Cathara, and Sarah was invited to observe. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Dozens of the space whales forming a perfect spiral in the void, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing in complex rhythms that Sarah realized was a form of communication far more sophisticated than their mental speech. The debate, when translated for human understanding, was intense. Some of the younger Kithara argued for retreat. The Devourers were simply too powerful, their modifications too extensive. Why risk the survival of the pod for the sake of alien builders? But the older members, led by Void Singer, held firm. Honor is not negotiable, the ancient predator declared. These small builders showed us courage when they aided our young. They showed us wisdom when they chose creation over destruction. We cannot abandon them now without abandoning ourselves. A younger Kithara, one Sarah had come to recognize as Swift Current, projected doubt and fear. The Devourers will destroy us all. Their weapons can tear through our hides. Their numbers are too great. What can honor do against such power? It was Marcus who provided the answer, his voice cutting through the mental debate with quiet confidence. Honor isn't about winning or losing. It's about choosing to do what's right, even when it's hard, even when it costs you everything. The silence that followed was profound. Sarah realized that the human concept of sacrifice for principle was almost completely alien to the Kithara mindset. They were pragmatic survivors, accustomed to making decisions based on clear benefit. The idea of choosing a doomed fight simply because it was morally correct was revolutionary to them. "Explain," Void Singer requested. Marcus looked out at the gathered aliens, these ancient predators who could snuff out human life without effort, and spoke with the calm certainty of someone stating an obvious truth. "Back on Earth, we have a saying, 'Better to die on your feet than live on your knees.' It means that some things are more important than survival. If we run from the Devourers, if we abandon this place because fighting is too dangerous, then what are we really? We become exactly what they think we are, prey that runs when the real predators arrive." Sarah watched the Kithara's bioluminescent patterns flicker and change as they processed this concept. These were beings who had survived for millennia by being pragmatic, by choosing their battles carefully. The human willingness to fight hopeless causes for abstract principles was as alien to them as their psychic abilities were to humanity. But Void Singer's response surprised everyone. "The small builder speaks wisdom. We have become so focused on survival that we have forgotten why survival matters. The Devourers are strong, yes, but they have lost something in their pursuit of power. They have lost the ability to choose anything but consumption." The decision, when it came, was unanimous. The true Kithara would stand with their human allies against their own corrupted kin. But victory would require more than good intentions and moral courage. It would require strategy, preparation, and a level of cooperation between species that had never been attempted before. Dr. Esbro Rodriguez found herself at the center of a crash program to integrate human technology with Kithara biology. The aliens' natural abilities were incredible, but they had never developed defensive systems designed to counter their own kind. Human shield technology, adapted and scaled up, might provide the protection they needed. "It's insane," Rodriguez muttered as she worked to calibrate the power requirements. "We're trying to build energy shields for living creatures the size of capital ships. The math doesn't even work properly." But somehow, it did work. The Kithara's natural bioelectric fields could be enhanced and focused using human gravitic generators. Within days, they had developed a hybrid system that wrapped each creature in a protective energy envelope. It wasn't perfect. The shields would only last for a few minutes under heavy fire, but it might be enough to even the odds. The humans contributed more than just technology. Sarah found herself serving as a tactical coordinator, her experience with three-dimensional space combat proving invaluable. The Kithara were natural hunters, but they had always operated as individuals or small groups. The concept of large-scale coordinated battle was foreign to them. "Think of it like a pack hunt," she explained during one of their strategy sessions. "But instead of surrounding prey, you're surrounding enemies who can fight back. You need coordination, timing, and backup plans for when things go wrong." Swift Current, despite initial doubts, proved to be an apt student. The young Kithara had a gift for spatial reasoning that complemented human tactical thinking perfectly. Together, they developed battle plans that played to each species' strengths, Kithara mobility and firepower supported by human coordination and defensive technology. But it was the psychological preparation that proved most challenging. The approaching devourers weren't just enemies, they were family. Corrupted, fallen family, but still kin to the true Kithara. The thought of fighting their own kind went against millions of years of evolutionary programming. "I don't understand how you do it," Swift Current admitted during a quiet moment between planning sessions. "Your kind fights wars against other humans. How do you bear the cost?" Sarah had been dreading this question. "How do you explain the tragedy of human conflict to an alien species? How do you make them understand that sometimes the people you love most become the people you have to stop? Because sometimes the people we care about lose their way," she said finally. "Sometimes they become so focused on their own needs that they forget about everyone else. And when that happens, when they start hurting innocent people, you have to choose between your love for them and your responsibility to protect others." The mental silence stretched on for a long time before Void Singer's ancient voice joined the conversation. "The Devourers were once our podmates. We hunted together, shared feeding grounds, raised young in the same nursery currents. But they chose power over wisdom, consumption over cultivation. They are no longer our kin. They are the shadow of what we might have become." The Devourer fleet arrived exactly when the long-range sensors predicted. 12 massive forms that moved through space with mechanical precision, their natural grace replaced by the brutal efficiency of living weapons. Behind them came their corrupted followers, dozens of smaller Kithara whose bodies had been twisted by artificial enhancements, their bioluminescent patterns replaced by harsh technological lights. The leader of the Devourers was a monster that dwarfed even Voidsinger. Ancient scars covered its hide, and half of its natural organs had been replaced with weapons systems that pulsed with malevolent energy. When it spoke, its mental voice was like acid eating through their minds. So, the rumors are true. The true Kithara have allied themselves with prey. How far you have fallen, Voidsinger. The ancient predator's response was calm but implacable. "We have not fallen, Hunger Eternal. We have risen. These small builders have shown us what you have forgotten, that true strength comes from creation, not consumption." Creation? The Devourer's laughter was like the sound of worlds dying. "I will show you creation. I will create a graveyard from this system. Your pet mammals will feed my followers, and you will watch as I consume their precious little nest." What followed was a battle unlike anything in recorded history. The Kithara fought with the fury of a species protecting its young, while the Devourers attacked with the mindless hunger of living weapons. Sarah's tactical coordination held the true Kithara formation together even as enemy fire tore through space around them. The human-designed shields proved their worth in the opening minutes. Swift Current took a direct hit that would have killed an unprotected Kithara, but the energy barrier absorbed the worst of the damage. The young alien was wounded but alive, and angry enough to return fire with interest. But the battle was far from won. The Devourer's modifications gave them raw power that the true Kithara couldn't match in direct confrontation. Worse, their numbers were beginning to tell. For every Devourer that fell, 2 true Kithara were forced to retreat with critical injuries. It was Marcus who spotted the opening they needed. While monitoring the battle from the station's command center, he noticed something odd about the Devourer formation. The corrupted creatures weren't just following orders, they were literally following them. Their artificial enhancements slaved to signals from the larger Devourers. "Captain!" he called out excitedly. "I think I've found their weakness. Those smaller creatures aren't thinking for themselves anymore. Cut the control signals and they might shut down entirely." Sarah felt a spark of hope for the first time since the battle began. It was a long shot, but it was better than watching her alien friends die one by one in a hopeless fight. "Elena, can we disrupt their communications?" Dr. Rodriguez was already running calculations on her console. "Maybe, if we can get close enough to their command ship, we might be able to overload their control systems with a focused electromagnetic pulse." "That's a suicide mission," Marcus pointed out grimly. "Someone would have to fly directly into weapons range of their flagship." Sarah was about to volunteer when Void Singer's mental voice filled the command center with grim determination. "No, small builders. This burden is ours to bear. We created the Devourers through our failure to stop them long ago. It is time to finish what we should have ended millennia past." The ancient Cathera's plan was simple, direct, and absolutely terrifying. While the other true Cathera provided cover, Void Singer would charge directly at Hunger Eternal, using the confusion to allow Swift Current to get close enough to the control ship to deploy the electromagnetic pulse. "You'll never survive that," Sarah protested. "Their leader is too heavily armed." "Perhaps, but some things are worth dying for. You taught us that, small builders. Your Marcus showed us courage without thought of reward. Your words showed us honor without promise of survival. Now we will show the galaxy what true Cathara fight for." As Sarah watched in horrified fascination, the ancient predator began to glow with an intensity that hurt to look at directly. Void Singer was drawing on reserves of power that most Cathera saved for their final moments, a last desperate surge of energy that would either destroy their enemies or kill them in the attempt. The charge began with a sound like the birth of stars. The sound of Void Singer's charge was something that would haunt Sarah's dreams for years afterward. It wasn't heard so much as felt, a deep thrumming that resonated through the station's hull and into the bones of everyone aboard. The ancient Cathara had become a living weapon, its entire body blazing with bioelectric energy as it hurtled toward the Devourer flagship. Hunger Eternal met the charge with cruel satisfaction. The corrupted leader's weapon systems opened up in a devastating barrage that lit up space like a miniature sun. But Void Singer didn't falter. The human-designed shields flared and sparked under the assault, buying precious seconds as the ancient predator closed the distance. "He's not going to make it," Marcus whispered, his hands gripping the console so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Sarah wanted to disagree, but the math was brutal. Void Singer's shields were failing, and Hunger Eternal's firepower was simply too overwhelming. The noble sacrifice would accomplish nothing except the death of humanity's greatest alien ally. But she had underestimated both human ingenuity and Cathara determination. "Captain," Dr. Rodriguez called out from her station, "I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from the mining equipment. Someone's overloading the extraction systems." The answer came through the mental link as Swift Current's voice joined their conversation. "Old Singer taught us much about honor, small builders. But you taught us something else. That smart prey survives longer than brave prey." While everyone's attention had been focused on Void Singer's desperate charge, the young Cathara had been busy. Using the mining station's own equipment, Swift Current had been building up a massive electromagnetic charge in the asteroid field itself. The rare metals that made the field so valuable were also excellent conductors, and the mining lasers could be reconfigured to create a weapon of unprecedented scale. "Incoming transmission from Swift Current," Liu announced. "She's asking for manual override codes to the mining array." Sarah didn't hesitate. "Give her everything she needs." What followed was a display of coordination that would be studied by military tacticians for generations. As Void Singer's charge reached its climax, Swift Current triggered the makeshift weapon. Lightning arced between asteroids in a web of destruction that caught half the Devourer fleet in its embrace. The corrupted creature's artificial enhancements, designed to drain energy from their victims, became vulnerabilities as the electromagnetic pulse overloaded their systems. But the real target was the control ship. The vessel that had been coordinating the smaller Devourers took the full brunt of Swift Current's improvised weapon. Its communication arrays exploded in showers of sparks, severing the command links that held the corrupted pod together. The effect was immediate and devastating. Without their artificial guidance systems, the smaller Devourers began to drift aimlessly, their modified minds unable to function without constant external direction. Several actually began attacking each other, their corrupted programming interpreting nearby movement as threats to eliminate. Hunger Eternal's roar of rage echoed across the battlefield as the ancient monster realized what had happened. But the distraction cost him precious moments. Void Singer's charge struck home with the force of a falling meteor, the two titans grappling in a display of raw power that dwarfed anything else in the system. "My God," Elena breathed. "They're actually fighting hand-to-hand? In space." It was an incredible sight. The two massive creatures wrapped around each other like wrestling giants, their crystalline teeth seeking vulnerable points while their natural weapons discharged at point-blank range. Void Singer's smaller size made him more agile, but Hunger Eternal's modifications gave him raw strength that the true Kithara couldn't match. "Void Singer's losing," Marcus observed grimly. "Those modifications are too much for him." Sarah watched the ancient predator she had come to respect struggle against his corrupted kin. Void Singer had given everything, risked everything, chosen to fight a hopeless battle for the sake of honor and friendship. If he died now, if Hunger Eternal won, then the corrupted Devourer would turn his attention to the mining station. All their work, all their sacrifice, would be for nothing. Unless... "Elena, how much of that electromagnetic charge is left in the mining array?" The xenobiologist checked her readings quickly. "Maybe 20%? Enough for one more burst, but nothing like what Swift Current used before. Can we target it precisely? Focus it on a single point instead of spreading it across the field?" "Theoretically, yes, but..." "Captain, you're not thinking of firing on the battle. We could hit Void Singer just as easily as the Devourer." Sarah was already moving toward the communications console. "Void Singer, can you hear me?" The ancient Kithara's response came through waves of pain and exhaustion. "Small builder, cannot hold much longer. I need you to trust me. Can you position Hunger Eternal between yourself and the largest asteroid cluster, the one with the mining platform?" Understanding flooded through the mental link, followed by something that might have been amusement. "Ah, clever small builders? Will attempt." What happened next required timing that bordered on the supernatural. Void Singer, despite his injuries, managed to maneuver the grappling match toward the designated position. At the last possible moment, he released his hold on Hunger Eternal and dove aside, leaving the Devourer exposed and confused. Sarah's finger hovered over the firing control. One shot. If she missed, Hunger Eternal would recover and finish Void Singer. If she hit but didn't do enough damage, the same result. And if the weapon misfired or the targeting was off. "Trust in your abilities, small builder," Swift Current's voice whispered through the link. "You have shown us courage. Now show us precision." Sarah pressed the button. The concentrated electromagnetic pulse lanced out from the mining platform with surgical precision. Unlike the wide-area attack that had disabled the smaller Devourers, this burst was focused into a tight beam that struck Hunger Eternal directly in his modified neural cluster. The artificial enhancements that had given him such power became his downfall as the pulse overloaded every system in his body. The ancient devourer's death scream echoed across the system, a sound of rage and disbelief that gradually faded into silence. The corrupted leader's body went limp, its bioluminescent patterns flickering once before going dark forever. The battle was over. In the aftermath, as rescue teams worked to tend the wounded and salvage what they could from the disabled devourer ships, Sarah found herself standing once again at the observation deck. But this time, she wasn't alone. Voidsinger floated nearby, his massive bulk scarred but alive, while Swift Current and several other true Kithra moved among the asteroids in peaceful patrol patterns. "It is finished," Voidsinger said, his mental voice carrying deep satisfaction. "The Devourers will trouble no one again. Their smaller kin will recover in time. Without the control signals, their original minds may reassert themselves." "What about the rest of your people?" Sarah asked. "The ones who weren't here for the battle?" "Word will spread quickly through the hunting grounds. Today, the true Kithara stood with small builders against our own corrupted kin. Today, we chose honor over survival, creation over consumption. Many will call us fools." Marcus joined them at the window, still moving carefully due to his injuries from the rescue weeks earlier. "And what do you call yourselves?" The ancient predator's response carried warmth that Sarah had never heard before. "We call ourselves friends." The implications of that friendship became clear over the following months. News of the battle spread throughout human space, carried by the first merchant vessels brave enough to venture into the formerly dangerous asteroid field. The story grew with each telling. Humans and alien predators fighting side by side, ancient creatures choosing principle over pragmatism. A mining station that had become the site of the most important first contact in human history. But the real changes went much deeper than simple publicity. The alliance between humans and true Kithara opened up possibilities that neither species had imagined alone. Human engineering combined with Kithara biosciences led to breakthrough after breakthrough. Mining techniques that could extract resources without environmental damage. Medical advances that promised to extend human lifespan by centuries. Defensive technologies that could protect entire star systems from natural disasters. Dr. Rodriguez found herself at the center of the most revolutionary research program in human history. The true Kithara's mastery of biological engineering, combined with human theoretical knowledge, was producing results that bordered on the miraculous. "They've been working with living matter for millions of years," she explained to a gathering of xenobiologists from across human space. "Their understanding of genetics, cellular manipulation, even consciousness itself is beyond anything we've achieved. In return, our mathematical models and technological infrastructure give them tools they never knew they needed." The cultural exchange was equally profound. Human concepts of individual achievement and personal sacrifice had challenged the Kithara's collective mindset, while their deep understanding of ecological balance was revolutionizing human approaches to colonization and terraforming. Swift Current, now acknowledged as a bridge between the species, had taken up permanent residence near the mining station. The young Kithara had become fascinated with human problem-solving techniques, spending hours in mental conversation with engineers and scientists who were equally eager to learn from an alien perspective. "Your people think differently than we do," she explained to Sarah during one of their regular talks. "You see problems as challenges to overcome rather than obstacles to avoid. It's a dangerous way of thinking, but also powerful." "And your people teach us patience," Sarah replied. "You think in terms of centuries, while we think in terms of years. Together, we can plan for futures that neither of us could achieve alone." The mining station itself had been transformed from a simple commercial operation into something resembling a diplomatic embassy. Representatives from both species worked side by side, developing protocols for expanded contact and establishing the foundation for what many hoped would become a lasting alliance. But perhaps the most significant change was philosophical. The true Cathara's choice to side with humans against their own kind had sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Other predator species, ones that had previously viewed humans as nothing more than prey, began to reconsider their assumptions. If the ancient Cathara could find value in alliance with these small builders, perhaps there were benefits to cooperation that had been overlooked. First contact protocols were hastily revised throughout human space. The possibility that apparent predators might actually be potential allies changed everything about how exploration and colonization were approached. Xenobiologists like Elena found themselves in unprecedented demand as advisors and interpreters. "The galaxy is much more complex than we thought," Elena explained to a joint human-Cathara research council. "Predator-prey relationships aren't fixed categories. They're choices. Species can choose to be hunters or gatherers, destroyers or creators, enemies or friends." The truth of that statement was demonstrated 6 months after the battle, when long-range sensors detected another unknown fleet approaching the system. For a tense few hours, both humans and Cathara prepared for another fight. But when the visitors finally arrived, they came in peace. The newcomers called themselves the Architects, an ancient species of builders whose crystalline ships were works of art as much as vessels of exploration. They had heard the story of the battle against the Devourers and had come to see for themselves the alliance that had made such cooperation possible. "Your reputation precedes you," their leader communicated through harmonic vibrations that human equipment could barely translate. Throughout the spiral arm, beings speak of the small builders who earned the friendship of the true Cathara. "We have come to learn from your example." What followed was the first tri-species diplomatic gathering in recorded history. Humans, Cathara, and Architects worked together to establish trade agreements, research partnerships, and mutual defense treaties. The asteroid field that had once been a lonely mining operation became the hub of an interspecies community that grew larger with each passing month. Standing at the observation deck that had become her favorite thinking spot, Sarah watched the newest arrivals, a delegation of crystalline beings whose ships looked like living jewels, dock with the expanded station facilities. 2 years ago, she had been a simple mining captain concerned with quotas and profit margins. Now she was witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in galactic history. "Regrets, small builder?" Void Singer's familiar mental voice asked. Sarah smiled, looking out at the bustling activity that filled the space around them. Ships from a dozen species moved in carefully choreographed patterns, while construction crews worked to expand the station to accommodate the growing diplomatic community. "No regrets," she said quietly. "But I do wonder sometimes what would have happened if Marcus hadn't helped that young Cathara, if we'd just minded our own business and tried to avoid contact." The ancient predator's response carried deep contentment. "Then we would all be poorer for it. The galaxy would be a smaller, lonelier place. You showed us that there is more to existence than simple survival. We showed you that strength and gentleness can coexist. Together, we have shown everyone that cooperation is stronger than competition." Swift Current's voice joined the conversation, bright with enthusiasm and possibility. "And this is only the beginning. Every day brings new ships, new species, new ideas. The small builders were right. The galaxy is large enough for everyone to thrive." As Sarah watched, a human child ran past the observation window, chasing after a young Cathara scout whose bioluminescent patterns flickered in what she had learned was the equivalent of laughter. The sight filled her with hope for a future where such scenes would be commonplace rather than miraculous. The mining operation that had brought them all together still continued, but it had become almost secondary to the greater work being accomplished. The asteroid field was being transformed into something new, not just a source of raw materials, but a symbol of what was possible when different species chose to see each other as partners rather than threats. "You have given us much, small builders," Void Singer said as the day cycle began to dim. "Wisdom, courage, hope for tomorrow. But perhaps most important, you have given us the knowledge that we are not alone in believing that the strong should protect the weak, that creation is better than destruction, that friendship is worth any sacrifice." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility and the lightness of hope in equal measure. The future stretched out before them, full of challenges and possibilities that none of them could fully imagine. But whatever came next, they would face it together. Predators and builders, ancient and young, united by the simple truth that some things were worth fighting for. The alliance that had begun with one act of courage and one choice to trust had grown into something that would reshape the galaxy. And at its heart was the understanding that strength was not measured by the ability to destroy, but by the wisdom to choose when not to destroy, and the courage to stand with friends no matter what the cost. In the end, that was the most human lesson of all, that the measure of civilization was not how well you could fight, but what you were willing to fight for.